Ayy, cause I'm full of Rhode. I got my name full of Rhode. I ride with the gang on the Rhode. We landed bang on the Rhode. And shout out La Rhode, we two-turned. And the city is hot like June 1st. They faking the streets, but real in they songs. But that ain't gon' cut it like Cool Herc. Ayy, cause I'm full of Rhode. I got my name full of Rhode. I ride with the gang on the Rhode. We landed bang on the Rhode. And shout out La Rhode, we two-turned. And the city is hot like June 1st. They faking the streets, but real in they songs. But that ain't gon' cut it like Cool Herc.
27. 27 is a number. It sounds like a number you use every day. It is a number you use every day. 27 is also an age. The age of Rebecca Spencer. 58 is a number. 58 is also a number you could use every single day. Doesn't really have that big of a meaning, but 58 also was the number of times Rebecca Spencer was stabbed. Brutally stabbed. Repeatedly stabbed. She was stabbed to death on July 27th, 1987. Now 13. 13 is a number. 13 is the age of her murderer. And her murderer was Craig Chandler Price, a 13-year-old boy from Warwick, Rhode Island. This was a summer that was brutal. His story doesn't end here. He is the youngest serial killer noted. And he kept going. He wasn't caught until 1989.
Get off my yo, that's what you can do. Get off my
That court order came after Craig Price admitted he murdered 4 of his neighbors in Warwick in the late 80s. Under Rhode Island law back then, because Craig Price was a juvenile, he would have been freed at age 21.
But Craig Price's time behind bars hasn't gone smoothly. Outrage erupted when this video surfaced him in the state training school. The juvenile lockup rapping about killing a cop. Price was shipped to Florida in 2004. Like many high-profile inmates, Rhode Island prosecutors have used Price's violent outbursts to their advantage. Each time he gets into trouble, he violates probation, and extra time is tacked onto his sentence. He was denied parole last month, just months after this latest tirade.
These are evidence photos obtained by Target 12 from one of those violent outbursts. Price was convicted for beating a correctional officer at the ACI in 19 and violated his probation for the incident.
Watch this.
We all want to leave our mark on the world. We want someone to remember us when we no longer walk the earth. We want to be remembered for our work, our charity, or maybe for being a good person. But what happens when that mark ruins the lives of countless people? Meet one of America's youngest serial killers, the notorious Craig Chandler Price.
Craig Price killed 4 of his neighbors in Warwick in the late 1980s, including 2 children.
Well, that's when he was just a teenager. He's been locked up ever since.
When it comes to nature versus nurture, Craig Chandler Price could seem to embody the latter more so than the first. His parents, John and Shirley, wed in Boston and later moved their family to Warwick, Rhode Island. Comprised of 30 small villages, Warwick was the second largest city in the state. The Prices enjoyed middle-class comfort in the fairly conservative, largely Irish Catholic community. John Price worked for Pepsi for 2 decades and was described as quick to turn to the belt. Craig recalls that he worked a lot and slept a lot but did participate in the boys' sports. Pepsi paraphernalia was a constant fixture throughout the Price children's childhood. Shirley Price was a Southern, godly woman who was willing and able to work 2 jobs to help ensure her brood's comfortable lifestyle. On October 11, 1973, Craig Chandler Price joined a sister 5 years older and a brother 2 years older. Some common terms that arise when reflecting on Craig's childhood include aggressive, immature, explosive, lazy and clumsy, but also likable and a pleasure to have in class. A wisecracking jokester, it was reported by teachers that Craig could be alternately antsy and lethargic. He played football and basketball, but was generally described as unmotivated. Delving into his younger years, it's determined that Craig admittedly began drinking his father's beer around age 7, if not a bit before. He says he was smoking marijuana and taking LSD since 13. By 15, he was drinking liquor and smoking weed daily and dropping acid roughly 4 times a week.
Get a little nigga a drink.
What the fuck is that?
What the hell you doing, boy? You mess around and shoot all of us.
Let me see it.
Wait a minute, let me show you how to hold it.
Hey! What you doing out that room?
I'm just out here playing, Mama.
Boy, you better get your little ass in that room before your daddy catch you. You hear me talking to you? Now! The hell?
Steroids was also utilized before football tryouts freshman year, leading to his nickname of Iron Man. At home, Craig was disobedient and was spending time out in the streets with what could only be classified as the wrong crowd. His father was working and sleeping, his mom worked 2 jobs, his older sister had her own life, and his older brother was heavily involved in sports. He began to be known to local authorities for petty burglaries and car break-ins. Dressed in what he called thieving clothes, all black with quiet tennis shoes, he prowled the neighborhood at night, snatching up items from his neighbors that he'd previously staked out. Sometimes he used his hulking 5'10", 280-pound frame to kick in doors, allowing his friends to gain access and ransack a home. In the spring of 1986, when Craig was 12, he was busted for breaking and entering, resulting in a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation, the results of which led to family counseling from December 1986 to June 1987. When it was over, Craig, now 13, immediately went back to his thieving ways. About a month after family counseling ended, he found himself in the backyard of a neighbor's house. Thinking it was empty and looking for something to steal, he says he entered through an unlocked back door. The television was on VH1, and moving boxes littered the space. Single mother and veteran 27-year-old Rebecca Spencer had been living with her brother Carl here in this little brown house on Inez Avenue in Buttonwoods. She and her young son and young daughter were moving out now, preparing for a bona fide fresh start, new job, new home, new life. That night, July 27, 1987, Becky's brother Carl was at his security guard job working overnights, and her kids were at their father's. Becky had been diligently packing her things neatly, furniture and larger items having already been moved. With her bedroom dismantled, Becky, alone in the house, laid down on the living room floor in front of the TV. This was where 13-year-old Craig Price discovered her. He said that he didn't see her until she saw him, so he stabbed her 58 times, using the knife with which she had carefully packed away her family's lives.
After working an overnight shift as a security guard, Carl Batty came home to find his 27-year-old sister lifeless, stabbed 58 times.
Bye.
Looks like it feels like it was like yesterday, even though it's been 27 years.
Yes. It sure does.
Becky, to her friends and family, was living with Betty temporarily. The night of the murders, Becky's 2 young children were spending the night at their father's house.
She enjoyed hanging with her friends, and she enjoyed her children. She worked hard to, make a better life for her children than we had as kids.
For 2 years, the crime remained unsolved. Then, more horror in the tight-knit Warwick neighborhood. The bodies of 39-year-old Joan Heaton and her 2 daughters, 10-year-old Jennifer and 8-year-old Melissa, again stabbed to death. Days later, in a confession that shocked Rhode Island, 15-year-old Craig Price admitted to all 4 murders.
At 13, he killed my sister, and at 15, he butchered her entire family. And I don't believe any time in the prison is going to stop him from doing it again once
Carl
he's released.
found his sister around dawn. She was still warm. Becky Spencer's murder case turned cold. So young herself at 27, yet murdered by a killer half her age. Craig Price was never under suspicion for this murder and spent the next year drinking, doing drugs, and thieving. And in August 1988, he was busted peeping in windows, casing for robberies by his own admission. Craig was hanging out with different crowds of kids, jumping from group to group, getting bored easily, and always looking for action. Referring to his friends as disciples, he never went anywhere without joints to endear him to his peers. As he grew up, he was known to dabble in Satanism and the occult. Heavy metal and horror posters adorned the walls of his cavernous basement bedroom. A briefly formed band named Predator rehearsed down there, Craig playing the guitar his mother Shirley had gotten him, hoping it would present a healthy distraction from troublemaking. As the summer came to a close, Craig was antsy and decided it was a good night to go thieving. Noticing a bike earlier, he had already sold it to someone and just needed to snatch it up while it was dark. The next-door neighbor had foiled that plan, coming outside and turning on his light just as Craig tried to make his move. That's when he noticed a house with open windows and headed down the alley until he was there. What he said he really wanted was a VCR, but he didn't see one. When he was inside, he chugged orange juice at the fridge, hearing the definite sounds of someone walking around the house. Joan Heaton clicked on the kitchen light, and they were face to face. He had never seen this woman before, even though he was only 4 houses down from his own. Craig immediately tried to overpower her and strangle her, and the sounds of the frenzy brought Joan's daughters from their bedrooms, sealing their fates. But now, the girls encountered what must have seemed like a giant, strangling their mother in the hallway. Craig went back into the kitchen and grabbed knives from the new block on top of the fridge. He said later that Joan was gurgling and screaming for the girls to get to the phone. There was no way for him to know which of the Heatons died first that night. When asked, Craig said that he just took turns stabbing the 3 until they were quiet. There had been so much noise, he had a feeling police must be on the way.
People have to know, just because he was 15 at the time, he wasn't just some poor little innocent kid that went astray. He killed 4 people. 1, and then 2 years later, 3 more, and 2 of them were children.
All right, so you put the clothes in the attic, you put the knives in the shed. What else do you do?
Live with guilt until I get caught.
What did she say to you when she saw you, Craig?
She didn't say anything. She was just like trying to, like, as soon as she seen me, like run the other way, break the other way.
Okay.
And I grabbed her. What happened then? So I was just like trying to kill her.
Do you remember one of the girls trying to get to the phone?
I don't know. She said, "Get to the phone, get to the phone." She was just saying that, "Get to the phone." She didn't say the name, but she said.
Did you remember one of the girls trying to get to the phone?
No, she was just standing at the side of the wall. And I was running back to the window back and forth to see if the police were coming or something like that.
If you can remember, how many knives did you use?
I don't know, a lot. About 6, I think, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, she bit me. You can see the mark right there. She bit me there, and I bit her back.
Okay, you covered the mother. Do you remember what you covered the other children with?
The rug.
Okay. All right.
Why did you call him? Because I didn't want to look at that.
So then I was like, oh, what the hell? I ran into like the kitchen. On top of the refrigerator was a knife. And I just killed them. Then what did you do?
Grabbed all the knives and everything that I could see, and then put them in a towel, then in the bag.
Did you get the towel in the bag from inside the house?
Yeah, in the bathroom.
Okay.
And then I just put everything in the bag. I even got the garbage bag out of the bathroom. When you found that bag, did you find all Dixie cups and everything in it?
I think they did.
Yeah, that was from their house.
How did you hurt your hand?
When I was stabbing, I guess I got careless or something. Like, and I stabbed my own finger.
Okay.
Glad I got caught for it. I am.
As he confessed to the murders, his father had to leave the room in order to be sick, and his mother cried. He pled guilty. With Price arrested less than a month before his 16th birthday, he had to be tried as a minor. A month after his arrest, the state legislature passed a law allowing juveniles to be tried in an adult court for serious crimes. However, this couldn't be applied to the boy the press was calling the Warwick Slasher. As a result, Price would be released and his records sealed as soon as he turned 21. The fact that Price would only serve 5 years for his crimes angered both the victims' families and the residents of Rhode Island. As a result, the group Citizens Opposed to the Release of Craig Price was formed. In 1990, Wesley Prophet, a psychiatrist from Massachusetts, examined Price for the state. Prophet wrote that Price was in a psychotic rage when the murders happened and that he was in need of treatment. He also said that even after receiving treatment, Price may not be well enough to be placed back in society. The court then ordered Price to undergo more psychiatric testing, but acting on the advice of his court-appointed lawyer, he refused. Price felt that the results would be used to commit him for life. In 1994, the Craig Price Bill was passed. This bill allowed judges to consider criminal records when deciding if someone should be committed to a psychiatric hospital. Contempt of court charges were also filed that same year against Price because of his refusal to undergo more psychiatric testing. But on the 11th of October 1994, Price would turn 21. Freedom would soon be a reality for Craig Price. Then Price threatened to, quote, snuff out a corrections officer. Extortion charges were filed against him. Price now had a new lawyer, civil rights advocate Robert Mann. Mann accused the Attorney General's office of twisting the laws to selectively prosecute Price. Just days before Price's 21st birthday, the verdict in the extortion case came in. The jury had found Price guilty, and he was given a 15-year sentence. Criminal contempt charges that came from his refusal to allow psychiatric testing added another year to Price's sentence. Angry at the verdict, Price said that he had paid his dues to society and was being persecuted because of his race. His 21st birthday no longer meant freedom. Fights in prison, including one in 2009 that caused a correctional officer an injury, has led to assault charges against Price.
Officers claim he made death threats, bringing us up to the vicious murders he confessed to years ago. It's all spelled out in this report that the I-Team recently discovered, and you can bet Rhode Island prosecutors were watching. I'm going to kill every officer I can get my hands on, just like I killed those little kids. New chilling threats from serial killer Craig Price just months ago.
Get me out of state. That's what I want to do.
Now 41, Price has been behind bars for 26 years.
When you get out. Get off my yo, that's what you can do. Get off my
In 1989, he was only 15, but bulky and 280 pounds when confessing to 4 murders in his Warwick neighborhood. Joan Heaton and her 2 daughters, 10-year-old Jennifer and 8-year-old Melissa, were savagely killed with kitchen knives in their Buttonwood home. Jennifer was stabbed 62 times. He was less than remorseful, later admitting to the murder of neighbor Rebecca Spencer 2 years earlier when Price was only 13. And because Price was so young when he committed his crimes, he was free to be released on his 21st birthday. But Craig Price's time behind bars hasn't gone smoothly. Outrage erupted when this video surfaced of him in the state training school, the juvenile lockup, rapping about killing a cop. Price was shipped to Florida in 2004. Like many high-profile inmates, Rhode Island prosecutors have used Price's violent outbursts to their advantage. Each time he gets into trouble, he violates probation and extra time is tacked onto his sentence. He was denied parole last month, just months after this latest tirade. The NBC 10i team got a hold of a December report from the Florida Department of Corrections. A correctional officer says Price spit on him and made multiple threats, saying, quote, "I'm going to kill every officer I can get my hands on, just like I killed those little kids."
This was the last photo of Craig Price taken when he was still behind bars in Rhode Island from 2004. This is Craig Price now, 41 years old, in a Florida prison. The photo was obtained by Target 12 as part of a wide-ranging investigation into Price's actions behind bars and how the prison system responded. His crimes are now infamous. At 15 years old, Price admitted to the 1989 stabbing deaths of 39-year-old Joan Heaton and her two daughters, 10-year-old Jennifer and 8-year-old Melissa. He also admitted to stabbing 27-year-old Rebecca Spencer to death. Price was just 13 years old. The horror happened in the close-knit Buttonwood section of Warwick where Price lived.
Underneath the blanket and the rug were these three bodies that were absolutely destroyed. The perpetrator that day was unbelievable.
Now retired, Kenneth Anderson was one of the Warwick detectives who worked the case. We located him in Florida, where he's now living.
He's a violent person.
He tried to get my face, my eye.
That's never going to go away.
And he left his finger right by my mouth.
That's in his DNA.
And I bit him.
He's a violent individual. He's never going to change.
And Price's violence continued behind bars. These are evidence photos obtained by Target 12 of a Rhode Island correctional officer after Price beat and kicked him in the prison library in 1998. Price was convicted of assault and sentenced to another year behind bars.
That does not surprise me that he beat that prison guard, and it's not going to surprise me that he's going to beat somebody else or kill somebody else if he gets the opportunity.
In 2002, Price was convicted of stabbing another inmate at the ACI with a pen. In all, the Department of Corrections says he's racked up 36 disciplinary actions while in Rhode Island. In a 16-page handwritten letter to Department of Corrections Director A.T. Wall, Price says his spotty record in prison is not entirely his fault. He writes, "I know I'm being set up." Price was moved to a Florida prison in 2004 because of security concerns, and his troubles continued. Court documents reviewed by Target 12 show in 2009, Price was convicted of stabbing a correctional officer in the hand with a homemade weapon during a fight in the Santa Rosa Correctional Institution. He was then moved to another Florida prison. As of last December, Price was being held at Sewanee Correctional Institution, a little over 100 miles west of Jacksonville. Court records show he ran into problems there as well, spitting on a guard during an altercation. The Rhode Island Department of Corrections tells Target 12 Price has had 5 infractions while incarcerated in Florida. Despite all the problems, both here and in Florida, Price has been able to accumulate more than 4 years of good time off his sentence. Now, keep in mind, Price is in Florida, but he's still considered a Rhode Island inmate, so he falls under the good time laws of this state, which makes our next finding even more shocking. Remember the 2009 stabbing of the prison guard in Florida? Price was charged and convicted and will have to serve an additional 2.5 years in Florida when his sentence with Rhode Island expires in just over 3 years. But we found the Rhode Island Department of Corrections did not take away any of Price's earned good time for stabbing the guard.
If we are going to send an inmate to another state because that inmate is problematic, then we rely on that state's professional judgment.
Department of Corrections Director A.T. Wall says Rhode Island didn't reduce Price's good time because Florida didn't recommend it.
If an inmate stabbed a correctional officer to the hand, would you reduce their good time?
Here in Rhode Island, I think it's highly likely that we would. I would say it's a certainty.
Well, he is a Rhode Island inmate.
He is being supervised for Rhode Island by Florida.
Wall adds that Price was unable to earn any good time for the month the stabbing took place.
They know who Craig Price is. They know what he's doing. And they have the opportunity to keep this guy in jail. That's where he belongs. Shame on them.
The Florida Department of Corrections denied our request to interview Price, citing security concerns.
But according to the Department of Corrections, he will complete his Rhode Island sentence in 2018. He will then serve another 2 years for assault that occurred in a Florida prison after he was transferred there. Price has appealed to the state Supreme Court many times, but these appeals have failed. He has also written letters to judges, those who work in the prison system, and the media, complaining about the time he has had to spend behind bars. According to Price, he has paid his dues to society. The families of Rebecca Spencer and Joan, Jennifer, and Melissa Heaton certainly won't agree.
And at noon, we have some breaking news involving notorious Rhode Island serial killer Craig Price. Target 12 has just confirmed that Price was involved in an incident at a Florida prison where he's being detained. Officials tell us Price was involved in a fight and allegedly stabbed another inmate. Let's get right over to Target 12 investigator Tim White with these breaking details.
Patrick, we are told the incident happened yesterday, and here's what we know. It's limited information. Craig Price is accused of stabbing another inmate at a prison in Florida where he is currently being held. A spokesperson for the Department of Corrections tells me Price allegedly stabbed another inmate who was taken to the hospital. I just got off the phone with that spokesperson who tells me that that inmate is in stable condition. Now, Price is now being held in what's called administrative confinement. The Florida Department of Corrections is investigating the incident. As you recall, Craig Price's crimes terrorized Rhode Island 3 decades ago. At 15 years old, Price admitted to the 1989 stabbing deaths of 39-year-old Joan Heaton and her 2 daughters, 10-year-old Jennifer and 8-year-old Melissa. He also admitted to stabbing 27-year-old Rebecca Spencer to death at just 13 years old, all of Warwick. In 2004, Rhode Island prison officials transferred Price to a Florida prison, citing security concerns for him and others. Price's Rhode Island sentence is set to expire in October 2017 because he has accrued years of good time. Now, keep in mind, he's not actually serving time for the murders because he was a juvenile when the crimes happened, and state law, which has since been changed, meant he could have been released when he turned 21, but rather he's in prison on a patchwork of sentences, including contempt of court and other incidents while behind bars. Now, after Price's Rhode Island sentence expires in less than a year, he still has 2.5 years hanging over his head for assaulting a prison guard there in 2009. The big headline, of course, is this latest incident may mean Craig Price will be kept behind bars for even longer. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, Eyewitness News.
All throughout Florida prisons, he's gotten in all kinds of trouble, and yeah, something's wrong.
Davis says due to an unknown medical condition, Price was usually in a wheelchair.
I mean, in the 8 months I've been there, he had a couple arguments with the captain or another officer, but never amounted to violence. But I didn't even know about his past until after all this came out.
Price, who admitted to murdering 4 people, including 2 young girls in Warwick in the late 1980s, is now serving 2.5 years for stabbing a Florida correctional officer during a fight with another inmate in 2009.
The guards kind of kept him at bay because he would get real loud and stuff. He's exceptional at legal work, and he's an accomplished martial artist, and everybody kind of knows that, but he's normally real calm.
That's a pretty serious case. He stabbed an inmate multiple times. If he received a lengthy period of incarceration in Florida, that would be great.
Rhode Island Assistant Attorney General Patrick Youngs has been on the Price case for more than 2 decades. Prosecutors say it's Price's own violent behavior behind bars that has kept him in prison all this time.
I don't sit here and hope somebody gets hurt so Craig Price stays in jail. But I dread the day he gets out. So sure, I hope he never gets out.
But that clock is ticking. If Price, who pleaded not guilty, is acquitted of the latest case, his sentence wraps up in just over 2 years, unlike Davis, who was sentenced to life in prison on a first-degree murder conviction.
I'm a pretty strong-willed person, so I mean, I put it in God's hands and didn't think about revenge. I mean, I did at first, but I let it go and I moved on. I mean, I've tried to move on.
Youngs says they have already filed court paperwork here in an effort to deem Price a probation violator for the Florida infractions. At most, that could mean another 6 years in prison for Price if they're successful.
The video obtained by Target 12 shows the inside of G-Dorm at the Sewanee Correctional Institution in Florida from 4 different angles. It was the morning of April 4th, 2017. Inmate Joshua Davis exits the showers and heads back to his cell. Here is Craig Price, the notorious Rhode Island serial killer, leaving his prison cell and dragging a wheelchair he used. Investigators say he was supposed to be on the way to the showers himself, but had a more sinister plot. He stops at Davis's cell, then briefly runs over and whispers in the ear of a fellow inmate, who later told investigators Price said, quote, "Everything is okay," but the inmate claims he didn't know what was about to go down. Price then barges into Davis's cell and starts attacking him with what investigators say was a 4 to 5 inch metal homemade knife. Chaos ensues. Records show Price stabbed Davis 6 times. Davis was somehow able to grab Price's hand holding the knife, slowing him down some. Eventually, Davis is able to scramble free. Price catches up and continues the attack. 2 correctional officers tackle Price, and Davis is dragged away by another inmate. You can see Price putting up a fight, kicking as they try and hold him down, so 2 other inmates help restrain him. After several minutes, they struggle to put him in a wheelchair and drag him off.
In the chest, in the head.
In an exclusive interview in 2017, Davis told Target 12 he had no idea what triggered Price to launch into the attack.
That's one of the questions I've continued to ask, is why. Because him and I never had a problem.
But court records show Price's cellmate, Brandon Golden, told investigators Price believed Davis was putting poison in their food, causing Golden to become sick. Golden told investigators Price is, quote, "like a big brother to me." Other records show Davis says right before the attack, Price said to him, "It was you, right?" There is no evidence to back up the poisoning claim.
Now to a story the Target 12 investigators broke first. It's another 25 years in prison for serial killer Craig Price.
The 45-year-old pleaded guilty to attempted murder in a Florida courtroom today. It is a significant development in this long-running case because Price was eligible to be released from prison this year.
And Target 12 investigator Tim White has been tracking this case every step of the way. He's here now with what he's learned.
Unlike in Rhode Island, there is no parole in Florida. Prosecutors there tell me Price must serve at least 85% of his sentence, which means he will be behind bars for at least another 21 years.
By pleading guilty to attempted first-degree murder and possession of contraband, Craig Price was sentenced to 25 years in prison. In 2017, Price stabbed fellow inmate Joshua Davis multiple times with a 5-inch homemade knife at a Florida prison.
I've been here 32, and I've seen a lot of really, really bad people. There's nobody like Craig Price.
Rhode Island Assistant Attorney General Patrick Youngs has handled Price's case for the last 25 years. Price was shipped off to Florida in 2004 because of his notoriety.
I can't thank the prosecutors down in Florida enough. They recognized how serious Craig Price was, period, to society, but also how important and how significant the case was to us here in Rhode Island.
In 1989, Price admitted to murdering 39-year-old Joan Heaton and her 2 daughters, Melissa and Jennifer, as well as 27-year-old Becky Spencer 2 years earlier. Price is serving time now for stabbing a Florida correctional officer during a fight with another inmate.
I have no doubt that if he had ever been released, he would have done something like this again.
Price will be 66 years old at his earliest possible release, and even then, Youngs tells me the state will try to hold him as a probation violator. With the Target 12 investigators, Tim White, Eyewitness News.
Man wouldn't do that. This isn't a man. Seems to me you're just plain scared.
Yes. Yeah, I am.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.